Drawing room over here.
Shrishti Bakshi was a successful marketer, working in Hong Kong, but keeping up to date with the news back home in India. Then, one day, she read about the brutal assault of a mother and daughter and wanted to do something more than an impassioned post on social media or even a simple marketing campaign. So she went home and started walking. Over many months, Shrishti walked almost 4,000 kilometres, meeting the people of her country and running workshops on equality. The journey and stories of violence against women have been captured in a moving new film, Womb, or Women of My Billion. Ajitesh Sharma is the film's director. Apurva Bakshi is the producer, and they're my guests in the drawing room. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is a powerful documentary, and I should say we'll be raising some issues that are pretty full on. But first of all, can you introduce us to Shrishti Bakshi, the woman at the heart of this film, and I should say the charismatic woman at the heart of the film?
So I know Shrishti since she was born. She is my younger sister and a very successful executive, as you introduced her. Since very early childhood, whenever she would set her mind to do something, she would leave no stone unturned to make it happen. So was this journey like as well. She was extremely disturbed by the stories that she was hearing from our native land, and also because we both are military kids. Our father served the Indian Army. We had traveled extensively across India through our childhood. And so it became more of a conversation and a love letter to the country saying that, are you beyond repair? And why is it that I get into conversations where you are deemed unsafe for women across the world? So that's who she is. I think she walked phenomenal amounts of distances every day and still found the courage to go and speak to women that she encountered. And these women also passed on their stories, which she was privy to, and then she passed it on to us for us to be able to weave a story. So that's who she is.
What made her begin this journey? She's a successful professional living overseas, having a good life, and obviously aware of the disturbing amount of violence against women in her own country. There was the single case that I mentioned, but it was more about that one case, wasn't it? And I thought the comment that she makes at the beginning, was my country beyond repair, was so strong. What led her to that point?
I think it was a culmination of, it started out, a big case was revealed in 2012. We have all been through teasing in our childhood. So she's been through those experiences herself. But I think there was a tipping point. She was having dinner with her colleagues, and the only way India was spoken about was, in the light of being very unsafe for women. And there's some sense of patriotism, and also then this was just followed through. She was traveling back in a bus back home, and she read about this case online, and it broke her in a way that she was inconsolable for almost a week. And you know how all of us are, we are so desensitized to the kind of crime that happens in India that everybody she spoke to were like, oh, what can you do? May justice be served. We can hold a vigil. But she just wanted to do more. So in a week's time, she decided. She sat down. She sat down with me and her husband. We had long conversations, and she said she wanted to do something about it. And then she decided that digital literacy and financial literacy are two things that she would use as her tools, but she would want to go on the ground and talk to talk to the women and figure out how do we change the conversations on dinner tables? Like, how deeply entrenched is patriarchy in our country?
And we'll talk about the walk in just a sec. But Ajitesh, how did you become involved in this, and what made you decide that there was a interesting documentary to be made out of the walk?
So this is an interesting story because I was never walking with Srishti when she was doing her journey. I was actually working with Apurva in Delhi. We were shooting for a different project, and Apurva at that point was also my producer. And Srishti was crossing Delhi in her journey, and Apurva introduced me to Srishti and her team. And like everybody else, I was also blown away when I realized that she's actually walking the length of the country from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. After she left from Delhi, the thought didn't leave my head, and I used to keep thinking about it. And then one day I spoke to Apurva. I told her that I see a film here. And Srishti was obviously working with the camera team because they were documenting interviews of women for their internal research purposes. So when Srishti finished her journey, when she reached Kashmir, she sent me some 8 hard drives, which is around 1,000 hours of footage. So I used to just watch that footage. It took me some 4 months to just watch that footage. And after that, I wrote a script and I narrated it to Apurva and Srishti. And that's how we decided to edit the film, make the film.
Mm. And tell us about the purpose of the walk, why the walk itself is important, because she could have achieved many of the aims, I suppose, of what she was trying to, raise, the issues she was trying to raise by driving between some of the towns and cities. So why the walk?
I think it all started out with the fact that, when you're really, really angry or frustrated or irritated, you tend to calm yourself down by taking a long walk. And not only was it symbolic, I think she decided that she wanted to dedicate her intention of wanting to go and meet each and every person that she would come across, and do it across the country, because there have been a lot of journeys where she could have driven from one spot to the other, but there has been no intent to not just meet institutions and destinations, but even people on the road. The biggest factor that came through was that our roads are considered very unsafe, Paul, for women in India, especially during the nights. And it was almost like a challenge that she took upon herself, that she would walk all alone between cities and through the country to be able to make sure that everybody knows that she's walking her talk, right? And the other big reason was that she was also collecting steps at that time, which was attached to an app where real nonprofits had registered. And if you would join that journey, her journey, and unlock a couple of 10,000 steps, you would unlock care packages for little girls and schools. So there was a very real, tangible result that was happening simultaneously with the Crossbow Miles movement, which is now turned into an incubator serving a lot of nonprofits in the country. So at that time, collecting steps became a very, very important tool through the app, and so that support could be unlocked for nonprofits who were working towards women empowerment. And there were almost 35,000 downloads of the app. People walked from across the world, clocking in, steps to be able to help the causes that they believed in.
Mm. Let's talk about the issues that the film looks at. And, we're talking here about domestic violence, rape in marriage, sexual abuse, acid attacks. I mean, really full-on violence against women. Srishti is not, or doesn't seem to be at least, personally impacted by a lot of the issues that she's talking about. Give us an idea about those issues and who is impacted in India, and whether this is a question of class, region, or luck. Can you talk to that a bit?
The idea about when she started her journey, Srishti really wanted to understand the ground reality of violence against women. So that's why she started her journey. And when she started speaking to women, that is when she realized that actually the problem lies in every class. It's in rural places as well. It's in urban cities as well. And during those interviews, and in fact, when I started watching the interviews, I realized that the men in the society, they do not acknowledge the issues, and that is why the violence is still going on. Nobody is trying to address the issues. And that was the idea of the film, that the least we can do, and I'm talking from a man's perspective, the least I can do as a man is to address. And that is from where when I start addressing, that is exactly it all starts. I need to accept it, and that is when I can start making changes in the society. So the idea of the work and the film was to start addressing these issues and to understand.
Paul, I would just like to add there, when we really started to, go through the walk, she was not an activist, nor an athlete, actually. She was just a very regular citizen of the country who decided to take on this extraordinary feat. But while she was walking, there were so many discoveries as to, even our nursery rhymes have a lot of sexism in them. Our language has a lot of sexism in it, where there is an attributable weaker tone given to anything female versus male. And these were the discoveries that, were converted into active workshops where the message could be simply communicated even amongst women to stop really thinking that gender equality is a distant dream, that they could start something, they could start correcting using the correct language. Like, if you've seen the film, girls in India are always just, taunted to talk about whether they can make good tea,
yes,
right? To be able to impress their in-laws. And that's something that even we have heard in our own home. And we had supposedly woke parents, very educated, from a very upper class family, but it perpetuates between classes. And in fact, at the very SEC, socioeconomic class D and E, the bigger struggle is survival, not even feeling empowered. So the discrimination really perpetuates between low middle classes to upper classes. And it all stems from the fact that we are so, like, women in the society are so financially dependent from the very beginning, and that there is just no sense of independence that they can dream of.
Yes, such is the state of living and just struggling through daily life because of the poverty, that something like empowerment just seems so far off, doesn't it?
Yes, for a certain section of the society, for sure. But I live in the United States, and I've been seeing, with COVID coming into the picture, the abuse rate across the world has gone up in terms of, just domestic rape. And you saw that two protagonists, educated families, coming from fairly decent, wealthier backgrounds, also were not spared the kind of violence that they went through. So I think it's beyond a class conversation when it comes to just patriarchy that gets perpetuated, or the male sex feeling stronger compared to the female. So but yes, so the poverty, below poverty line, there's just no conversation that you can have. They are barely making it to having one meal a day. So.
Yeah. On RN, I'm Paul Barclay. Apoorva Bakshi and Ajitash Sharma are my guests in the drawing room, and we're talking about their extremely powerful movie, Womb, or Women of My Billion. At one point in the film, Srishti says it's all connected to the dowry and marriage. Why is dowry such a central factor here?
Because It's been a traditional archaic ritual that started out with a very different intention. Dowry was only given in the very yesteryears and millions of years ago. It was given in a way to comfort the daughter with similar things that she would have at her own home to feel welcome in the next. Also, girls were married very young at that point in time. As young brides, 12 or 13 years, they were still children, so they would take their dolls and take their own things which they would feel comfortable with in their new homes. What it did was it started out this entire tradition, which today is almost synonym to the girl being a liability. So the moment a girl child is born in your household, she's somebody who you'll have to pay for while she gets married, and the son brings money in. So it almost became transactional. And so the father of daughters feel extremely burdened with the fact that there is an open demand by the groom's side to be able to take the daughter in and take care of her. And the more money she brings in is the more regard or respect she gets.
Well, Shrishti makes the comment actually at one point, if you're paying for a woman, she will always be a liability, which I thought was a very telling comment.
True.
I should say, though, this is not just Shrishti's film. There are three women who feature throughout the course of the film. All of them have endured so much, but are presented as women with such courage, ultimately. Perhaps we could just very briefly get a sense of the three women.
So the three protagonists are Sangeeta, Pragya and Neha. And when Srishti sent me the footage, there were about 300 plus interviews of women that she took. And it was a challenging task for me as a director to show these stories, because the idea was to intercut stories of women with Srishti's walk, because it's not a new thing. In India, these problems have been there since forever. And so it was a challenging task, and we started shortlisting women from 300. We came down to 12, and then we came down to 3, Sangeeta, Neha and Pragya, because these three women, they sort of represent their own spectrum. Pragya talks about acid attacks, Sangeeta talks about widowhood, and Neha talks about torture by in-laws and marital rape. So sort of these three women sort of represent the entire spectrum of violence that is happening in this country.
Also, they emerged as survivors. I think that's their such a brave survivor story was so inspirational.
Yes.
That it was important to pass on the message that however big the struggle was, they were able to overcome it.
Look, it's hard to. I shouldn't single out any one of them, but Pragya, the founder of the Foundation for the Survivors of Acid and Burns attacks, comes across as a remarkable woman.
She's extraordinary. She has dedicated her life to rehabilitating girls who go through similar forms of violence, and she is helping them not only rehabilitate but seek employment and fight and lobby for equal opportunities for the community. So hats off to her. She's truly inspirational.
I mean, this must have been a traumatic journey in some respects. I suppose vicariously traumatic experience for Srishti, speaking to so many women, hearing so many stories which are captured on camera. How did you manage the mental side of the project? Because it would have been a lot, I imagine, for Srishti to bear.
It was actually. There were I think 4 times, which was much less than I had expected. Because I don't know, Paul, if you've walked, but 30 kilometers a day, it puts you in a zone of you've thought about everything under the sun, and you're still with your own thoughts, and you start thinking about deeper issues that exist around you and what you could do for the society. And there were 4 times that she broke down. And I think after Deval, which was the midpoint, where she saw a little girl succumbing to violent attacks, where she was burnt alive. And at that point in time, it was almost it was a break point. It was something that she didn't even care about the camera. She was just very devastated and thinking about what's the point. Right. You keep trying to do these workshops, and you make them make people feel empowered for 1 day or 2 days. But then what's the point? But the very next day, I think she did meet somebody on the road, a lady who was selling custard apple. And she read, she heard from others walking with Srishti that Srishti is walking and doing this for, the women of her billion. And she came running from her basket of 12 custard apples. She gave Srishti 4 and said, that was her contribution towards the walk, that she was so proud. And that from that day onwards, her daughter would not be treated badly at home, and that she would fight for her. And I think those are the stories of hope that we were able to also capture, that kept her going. That even if one person would come and tell her that they felt differently now, and they would take action, males and females, towards making a difference at home, I think that kept her going.
Look,
and it's still happening, right? Like people watch the film and they call and they talk about abuse in their homes and how they are trying to tackle it now. So that was the purpose of the whole walk.
Yes, hope is what is desperately needed at the end of this documentary, after we've heard examples of police refusing to protect women who are being abused within their marriage, after we've seen a visit to a cafe run by acid attack survivors. We've had a lot presented to us about the incredible violence inflicted on women. But Ajitesh, in the end, it is hope that we are provided with. And I wonder, there was the point, and I think Apoorva was alluding to this, where Srishti asks, are we opportunists or are we actually achieving something? Did you see your role as director as in a way being more than a director? Are you, in a sense, an activist here trying to change something?
I am not sure if I'm an activist, but I certainly did change during the course of the making of the film, because I became more aware. And the reason why the film ends at such a note is because we started calling these women as survivors and not victims. And it was important to culminate the film by Srishti saying that it is important for India as a country to become united, so that we can start making change. And when Srishti says that she feels like an opportunist, it was that moment where she, in the film also, it was that moment where she was so low in her journey, because the kind of stories she was listening, she almost lost hope. And that's how the workshops that you see were used as a tool for Srishti and those women to bring them together in a room and ask them to stand up for themselves.
Look, it's been terrific talking to the both of you. Can I say how tremendously moved I was by the documentary at many times with tears in my eyes. Congratulations on the documentary, and let's hope it does bring about some change in India. I've been talking to Ajitesh Sharma and Apoorva Baxi. They've been my guests in the drawing room. Their film Womb, or Women of My Billion, will be appearing as the opening night feature at the Indian Film Festival of Melbourne. Check online for details. It comes with my recommendation, I should say. And if this conversation has raised any concerns for you and you need someone to talk to, the number for 800 RESPECT, that's the number, 1800 RESPECT, and Lifeline 131114.